that we have, or the AI offering that we have, I should say. So I thought let's widen cast a wider net a little bit and take that into account as well. And actually, if we're gonna look at OpenAI and Azure AI, then for most of the things that you'll do in Azure, you'll get a new kind of portal. So that's the Azure AI Studio over here. And what I did is I opened up this. Let me see. I can have a pointer here. I opened up this menu here on the top left. And that gives me access to all the different studios that have now been integrated into this Azure AI Studio. At first, we're going to look at integrating ChatGPT. So that's part of what you can see here in this chat playground. And then for the second part of the code demo, we're also going to take a look at what's available here in the Vision Studio. And what we try to do with all these studios is to make the examples that we have more widely available and easier to find and easier to navigate, so that you would be up and running yourself with a working code example in a lot less of time than it would take before. So what will we take a look at today? Well, we'll start with building from scratch a Blazor application, and we'll integrate ChatGPT inside that application. We'll be doing that with a kind of a different template than we used the last time. Then it was all kind of the same Bootstrap template that you all know and have seen many times before if looking at Blazor demos. But today we're going to do it a little bit different, and we'll use the library Preeti mentioned. There's also a template available that you can use that easily from Visual Studio. We'll set that up from the start and then see how we can integrate ChatGPT in that. We're not, of course, going to be coding it line by line. We'll be copying in some examples, some stuff that I prepared, but we'll go through the code and I'll try to explain what it does and how it works. So if there's questions there, please make it known in the chat. Then if we have that ChatGPT part, we're going to take another look at that model that's behind that, the GPT 3.5 model, and take a look at embeddings. And in my next slide, I'll explain a little bit more about embeddings, because those are kind of like the foundational building blocks that we have in these large language models. So getting a little bit of understanding how these work is, I think, beneficial to make you a better developer and working with these OpenAI things that we have to offer. And finally, we look at the Vision Studio and an example and also an app that I have running locally, and see how we can kind of feed it images and get information out of those images. But first, a little bit more about embeddings. So there's a lot of text here, but I'm also going to tell a little bit more about it. So it's a way to represent a piece of text, and that captures what it means. So if you have two words, it by the means of the embeddings, it knows what the relationship, or it tries to calculate what the relationship between those two words is. And as it says, if they're close together, it means that the text they represent are similar in meaning. And if they're not close together, the numbers will differ more. This is often used in what we call a retrieval augmented generation pattern, also known as RAG. And that's a technique for building those natural language generation systems. And basically what it does is it translates the language into math, and because of it being math and numbers, that makes it easier to find those relationships. So what it does is it retrieves a set of passages that are related to a search query, and then uses those to supply a grounding to the prompt that you're finally going to use. And then finally, it generates a natural language response that incorporates the information that has been retrieved. And embeddings and vectors are like, what I said, the primary tool used to perform the searches needed and to return the relevant chunks of text. Now, that all seems perhaps a little bit abstract by these large lines of text, but hopefully with the example that I have prepared, that will make it a little bit easier to understand or easier to grasp. If not, let us know, and then we can see if we can give it some more attention in a follow-up. So that's it for the slides. Let's move on to a different part. So let me just start sharing my screen. This one. And if everything went okay, I think it went okay. You should be seeing my Azure portal right now. And what I've done here is I've created a specific resource group in which I've created the necessary services for working with Azure OpenAI, but also with the division part of the cognitive services. Now, to do that and to start with that, you do need to create those services. And if you want to create those services, there's kind of like a holding pattern in place now because of all the attention that it gets and the huge number of people that are trying to use it. We, of course, as internal Microsoft people, are put a little bit in front of in the line sometimes, so that's why we can demo it to you. But if you're going to create these resources yourself, it might take a couple of days before you get let in and then can actually start using these services. So this is just the regular portal that you all know and love and have seen many times before, but the actual interface to the services is what I said in the Azure AI Studio. So if I go, for example, here to my OpenAI service that I created, you see that there's actually very little. There's some the usual suspects here in the left-hand menu. Important here are the keys and endpoints because those are the things that you need to kind of call the APIs. Of course, it's all being secured by keys and known on a certain endpoint so that you can call those APIs over the network. But the rest is all basically standard portal stuff. And if I would go here to say for model deployment, you see that I'm immediately kind of pushed and toward the Azure OpenAI Studio. Well, let's go there and open that up. And then you'll see the screen that I just already showed in the presentation. So basically here, it has everything that has to do with the Azure AI services that we have and offer. I'm already logged in here. And here you can see, if I go to the start page, that it integrates all these services and all these parts of the OpenAI service that we have in one screen, with easy to find and easy to download and run samples in there. So, for example, here in the playground, I could go to chat, and I kind of have this chatbot already set up for me. So I can start experimenting with that. I can train it on my own models, and I can set some parameters, etc. We're not going to go into all those technical details now that are there. But yeah, this is all already set up and ready to run. And even if you're content with what it's doing and what it's showing, it allows you to already deploy that to a setup web application in your Azure subscription. Such a chatbot could immediately be made available to more people in your organization by means of this deployment. I'm not going to go into all the, say, more technical details of how this OpenAI and ChatGPT, etc., are being set up. There's plenty of assistance on that and tutorials on how to do that. For now, let's just suffice with saying I set up two models here. One is for the text embeddings, and the other one is for the GPT 3.5 Turbo. I could also use the GPT-4, but then again, yeah, we are faced with a waiting list, so that would take some time to get that set up. Depending on the region where you are setting this up in Azure, there could also be a slight difference in which model version that you get. And basically, the higher the version, the more functionality you get. So I kind of wanted to show you also today how you could use functions in ChatGPT. So basically just giving commands to the bot and then calling external APIs. But yeah, that was only possible if I was on model 601, which is only available in East US. And with me being in Western Europe, that's kind of a long-running process. And I already had this one set up, so I couldn't create a new one in a different region. And I didn't want to start all over again. So yeah, I changed it up a little bit. So yeah, these are all set up. I use these that key, and I use that endpoint, and I made a note of that so that I can use them in my own program that I'm now going to build to call these APIs and use these services. Like I said in the presentation, with the menu here in the top left, you can also go into other parts of this AI offering. And basically all the things that we had within the cognitive services, like the speech and the vision APIs, are now also being exported and exposed here through this Azure AI Studio. So everything together nice and tightly and easy to access. Any questions so far? Cool. Then I'll move on into Visual Studio because that's where most of the action will be today. And basically what I've done is I've just set up an empty solution, and now we're gonna, from scratch, start with the Blazor application and see what we need to do to get ChatGPT running inside that Blazor application. So first thing first, of course, we're gonna click on the solution and say we're gonna add a new project. And of course, it's gonna be a Blazor project. But this time we're not going to start with like the regular Blazor server app or the WebAssembly app, or even the new .NET 8 Blazor web app, which is kind of a accumulation of those two things that we had before. But we're going to use a specific template that you can get if you install a NuGet package for that, which uses the Fluent UI Blazor library that I've created and published on NuGet, and which is basically the original or the official Microsoft entry to get Fluent UI inside your Blazor application. So let's select that one, and we'll give it a name. Oh, and now I have to, of course, you choose the correct name. What was it again? Azure. I think it was this, but otherwise, let me check for just a second. Oh, maybe I can see that here. No. I think it was this. Well, we'll just go with the defaults, and now the application has been created, of course. And let's just give it a run to see what it looks like. Because basically what I've done within that template is just translate the template that is the standard template that you have, but give it the Fluent UI look and feel. But I haven't actually changed anything else on it. So once it's up and running, and we'll take a look, you'll see that it has all these same components that are already there. If you use the regular template, it has the menu on the left, it has an index page with that survey, the counter is there, the fetch data is there. So yeah, everything that you get with the normal template, but just with a different look and feel. And like we said already a couple of times, it's using this library that we created, which has a demo site available, where you can see all the components that are part of that. and how you could use those inside your application. So that's not the focus of today, but we will be using that in the example here. All right, so let's close this down and start closing this one. Let's view my toolbox over here and go into my index page. So first thing we need to do is, of course, make it known to the application that we're going to use this OpenAI service. And for that, we need to give it that key and that endpoint. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that inside a Blazor application. I could just hard code them, of course, in the code, which is not really what we recommend. We could use Key Vault, but for this example, that's a bit over the top, perhaps. We could use the user secrets functionality that you have in Visual Studio, so that it is kind of stored, but it's not going to be part of your repo if you're using source code repositories like GitHub or others. It stays on your local machine. But for now, for just keeping it easier, I'm just going to be adding those settings here in my app settings. And basically, I'm just creating a key here, the OpenAI service options one. It has the endpoint. It has a reference to the model that we saw earlier in the AI Studio. And it has a key. And if you're going to make a screenshot, you could use my service and start running against it. But after this demo, I'm going to regenerate my key, so it won't work anymore. But yeah, this is now inside the application settings file. So I can use that from within my application and get those login details when I need them. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a empty class called string extensions. Extensions. And I'm just gonna replace that all with this prepared code. Oh, of course, I also need to install some packages first, because otherwise you're gonna see, like here, it's gonna barf on all the errors that we have. So there's two packages that we need to add to this site. And we're gonna do that through the Visual Studio NuGet Package Manager. I could also do that through the command line, of course. And I'm going to browse here. And the two things that we need are, one is MarkDig, which is a C# library which allows you to parse and spell out Markdown. Well known and very much used. So let's install that one. And the other package that we need is the Azure OpenAI application SDK that we have. Currently, it's at 1.0 beta 7. And yeah, regularly we'll be releasing updates to that until we have a 1.1 release candidate, and after that a final, I'm assuming. Yeah, and then there'll be some more maintenance version, the newer versions, of course. So adding that one as well. So now if you take a look at the installed packages, and I'm going to erase this search term, you see that besides the two that are there, the other one is the Fluent UI package that we spoke about earlier, but the template made sure that this was already set up and it's using the latest version that's available. So closing that up and then going back to my string extensions, we can now see that all the code is being recognized, and we don't have any squigglies here. So now it's working again. Then to prepare for what we're going to see later on, I also need to add a little piece of scripting here in the template, in the actual rendered JavaScript. So that just makes sure that whenever we get those text balloons, we always scroll down to the bottom of the list. So to minimize the amount of scrolling that you need to do yourself. And for getting the actual functionality in place, we're just gonna hijack the index page. So that survey that you saw when I ran the app is gonna disappear. Oops, I'm just gonna go here. Oops. Select everything and say that I'm gonna use this as my code. Well, I've always a big fan of separating the markup and the code from each other. So I haven't added the code yet, and that's why we now see all these squigglies here in the Razor editor, because the code has not been added yet. So we can do that now. I'm using an extension. There's several ways that you can do it. Of course, you can just create a new item, but there's also an extension available which kind of gives you these extra options that you get on Razor files. And with this, I can just easily say, okay, create a code behind file, and it sets that up and already adds the namespace and the right class name, etc. So that makes it a little bit easier to get that separation between markup and code. But today I'm gonna just replace everything again and add all the source code. And this is quite a chunk of code. We'll go through that later on, but now we'll first want to get it up and running as quick as possible. And one of the other things that we also need to do is there is already a CSS file, but we want some more specific markup there to make sure that the chat boxes and everything look a little bit better and sharper than what we get with the out-of-the-box template. So index Razor. And yeah, basically that's it for now. So by just changing the index page, adding a code behind file, setting up some styles, and a small bit of extensions to make that working with the Markdown a little bit easier. Yeah, we've now basically integrated ChatGPT in our Blazor application. So let's give it a whirl and see if I didn't mess up anywhere. And there we have it. So there's exactly the same application that we saw when we started this demo or created this project, but now the index has been replaced. It's giving us a kind of like the familiar chat interface that we always also saw in the AI Studio. It comes with a prepared prompt here. Of course, we can also type something else, but let's just go with this. And you see a kind of a graphical representation of what we are saying and what OpenAI is giving back to us. And yeah, it's pretty smart, as you know, of course. No surprises here, but it also knows Blazor code pretty well. So if you're relatively new to Blazor and you would like to use this to learn more about it, yeah, that's definitely a nice opportunity here. So for example, I could say, show me an example of a counter component. What would that look like? And then it comes back with, after a little bit of thinking, like, okay, yeah, this could be like a counter component. And if we're going to compare this to the code that the template already generated, then we'll see that it's for 99.9% the same. The only thing that you're seeing here is that it's not using any parameters. So this is a very simple component. So I would like to extend that a little bit and say, well, maybe I would like to have a parameter for the increment instead of just going from 1 to 2. But I would like to give it an increment and then go from 1 to 5 in one go. So now it has added that parameter here. It gave the default value of 1. So the overall behavior is still the same. And I have to say, it got a little bit smarter now because I asked it this before in my preparations earlier this week. And then it kind of added a parameter here to the increment count method, but it didn't add the parameter to the component. And I had to add another prompt, say use the parameter attribute to add an increment parameter. And then it knew, okay, I need to generate this code and create that parameter code inside the component. But it has learned, so now I don't have to ask that anymore, and it immediately comes with this example, which is pretty complete and accurate. Now, of course, there's always the same as with every ChatGPT and OpenAI is valid here as well. It does a good job. It tries its best, but it's not always correct. So just start copying that code and try it yourself. But there's no 100% guarantee that it's always going to work in that same way. Pretty sophisticated application within a couple of minutes of copying and pasting some code, I think. So for now, let's close this and take a little bit of a closer look at the. I can leave it. No, I'll close it and look at how this application then works. And we'll start with the front end, so the actual page that we saw. And basically, it's just a big container here, block of HTML. I'll pump up the size a little bit if that makes it easier to read. So we have a chat container here, which contains a for each loop that goes through all the chat messages and uses the styling that we pasted inside of this isolated CSS file. To make sure that it looks a little bit better than it would in just plain HTML or Markdown. Within every chat message, it's taking a look at who created this. Is this the user or is this the assistant? So the user was the label you or us or whatever it said. And assistant is what comes back from the ChatGPT bot and service. Then if we're not processing, we want to see the actual buttons and enable the buttons that are shown on the screen. So we saw that call ChatGPT button, and we saw that restart button. As we discussed on the first session, we have these events that we can hook into this interface component. So in this case, we're hooking up the on-click event of the button to call the ChatGPT function. And for the restart button, it calls the reset method in the load behind file. Now, the difference that you see here between using actual HTML or using the built-in components is that these are all using the Fluent UI components that are part of this library package that we installed. So by using that demo site that I showed earlier, you can get a good indication of what kind of components are in there, how can I use them, what are the parameters. There's a lot of samples also in there, so that makes it easier with code so that you can copy over. But yeah, this just basically saves you from styling an application yourself. And by using these components, you will make sure that it's going to look like a kind of Microsoft Windows 11-like application. So yeah, in general, it just makes it a little bit easier to use that. All right, questions so far? Good. Then moving on to the code behind. So we start by setting up this prompt so that you don't have to start typing every question yourself. It just uses this as a kind of first step and saving you to enter that information yourself. Then if the component starts, if the application starts, because this is the page with which the application starts, the onInitialized function is being called, which is a standard Blazor component function, which is kind of like on the top of the methods that it calls when it goes rendering a page. And what we do there is we use the configuration, which is a standard .NET method that you can use to use the application settings and the things that you put in there. And by using these columns, we can kind of drill into the settings that we have in that app settings file. So we saw the Azure OpenAI service as kind of the root of those settings, and within that we have the endpoint, we have the deployment or model name, and we have the key. And basically, I'm just reading those here and storing them for later use. These are some training messages. What we also want to do is, like I said, I pasted in that little bit of code to make sure that we're always, once we get an answer from ChatGPT, that we always scroll to the bottom. Of course, we only want to do that once the answer has been returned. So that's when we call another one of the basic page rendering methods, which is on after render async. The async part indicates that it's running asyncly. And on after render, yeah, I think that speaks for itself. So the component is done rendering, and then afterwards it does this. It calls into the JavaScript interop, and then scrolls to the bottom. Now, within the first presentation that we did, we were already saying, yeah, you don't have to use JavaScript, but for these kinds of things, yeah, sometimes it's just easier to make a little sidestep and do some very light JavaScript work. But in the whole application, in calling the APIs and everything in between, showing the user interface, etc., this is the only piece of JavaScript that we have. So I think that's manageable. First, we'll look at the restart function. So basically, we'll just say, okay, clear the list of messages that was returned from the earlier conversation. Start with a new prompt, reset the tokens, reset any errors, and just add something to the chat messages to give the API kind of a push to say, okay, we're now starting, and we're just doing this with this kind of fake content. And then we call state has changed. And what state has changed does in Blazor is kind of say, okay, something has happened within the code, and you kind of need to re-render the application. You need to re-render the screen. So that's what we're doing here to basically make sure that the list on the screen has also turning empty, and the total tokens, etc., is also being replaced. Now, what do we want to do if we push that call chat GPT button? This is the method that's then being called from here. We can also see that here. If I go to implementation, it will go to this code in the code behind file. So this is where the actual action takes place and where the work is being done. And it's a heavily commented code, so that makes it kind of clear what's happening. We're updating the state, the processing state. We want to make sure that the buttons get disabled. So in the meantime, while that's happening, we do a state has changed. So the interface is getting updated. And here we're calling into what methods are being offered, what services are being offered through the package that we installed with the package manager. So we're creating a OpenAI client. We're using that endpoint that we have in the settings. We're using that key that we have in the settings. And basically, this is all that is needed to configure that client. And then we can start feeding it with information. Now, in the OpenAI Studio, I showed some of the parameters that you can use to kind of tweak the model. We also use that. Again, I'm not going to go into the specific details of what you can do there, but I think you can understand what max tokens do and what the temperature is kind of like, okay, yeah, what is the voice of tone that we're going to use in this chat? And yeah, these are all kinds of levers that you can turn to kind of tweak the interaction with ChatGPT. But for now, this works pretty good. There's also another example that I could share that a colleague of mine built. This is called Angry GPT or Angry Chat, something like that, where we really pushed the boundaries of the parameters that we could set. And yeah, it's well, if you want to get into a fight, like on the keyboard, use that example to see how it tries to kind of shout at you and do nasty things in chat. Okay, then further on with this code. So we're gonna just give a new chat message to the list of messages, and then basically once we get the response back from the client, the get chat completion is that we parse that result, and we're gonna add that to the list of messages, and then again say, okay, the state has changed, so now update the screen. So that's basically the simple version of what is happening here. And that you might have also seen that in other applications of the ChatGPT service, what you basically need to do is always feed it all the previous information as well. So the refinements that I did with show me an example of a Blazor counter component, and then not specifying anything about that code that was shown, I said add a parameter. And because I'm always sending the whole chat history back and forth, it knows the context of what I'm asking, and therefore it could guess, okay, you want to change this counter component that I already gave you the source code for. So that's what you're seeing here, to make sure that always the whole history is going back and forth. And yeah, that's all the code that's there. So with 117 lines of code and this bit of 64 lines of front-end code, we have this whole chat interface built and running, which is pretty amazing, I think. Are there questions concerning this part of the code? Okay, good. And then let's move on to the other sample that I've prepared, which is also a project that I can add here. So let's add that here to the solution, which is the image analysis sample project. And that's actually not a web interface sample, but this is using the plain old command prompt. And basically what it does, it calls into the Azure.ai.vision SDKs that we have. So if you would look at the project file, you see that it also has an SDK in the form of a NuGet package included in the program. In this case, I'm targeting .NET 7 as the runtime. And in this code, I basically have, if we look at the program, so it's a command line program, so it has a lot of console.write lines, of course, giving you some explanations on what you can do with it. But for now, let's just assume that it says what it does on the tin, so we can just run it. And basically, these are the four samples that we can use. So we can give it an analyze, which basically uses a file prepared on your computer. You can do also that in an async fashion, where you kind of give it a URL of an image that is somewhere on the internet, and it goes through the analyze steps. You could create a custom model for that, or you could do any kind of segmentation with that analysis results. So let's just get the command prompt here on this screen, and well, it's just a DLL that gets created, or maybe even an exe file that gets created. But by doing a .NET call with the DLL that gets compiled, we can just run this program. So we can now just do that. And what it basically does is, and we're going to go with the second option, analyze an image from a URL asynchronously, non-blocking. So while it's doing that, it could do other things. And it's going to take a look at this image. And with that image, it's going to do this kind of functionality. I already prepared that, of course, but now instead of doing that through the studio, we're going to do that ourselves. So it's going to analyze that image, and it's going to say, these are the attributes on this image that I kind of recognized. And within the parentheses, it gives the confidence of which it gives to these terms on what it found. So it's 98.66% sure that there's a computer in this image. It's a little less sure that it's a woman, but still pretty high. And what using is a little bit of a strange one in this regards of using using the computer, perhaps, maybe. But you can see that confidence level is not that high. So in your program, you could, of course, then say, okay, if it's anywhere below 75%, I'm not going to mention it, and I'm not going to use that term. So here it's all packaged up in the studio, ready to run. You can just run it here. You can upload your own files, or you can also do this on, say, some images that are already there. As you can see, it's pretty fast. So yeah, it's just extracting all that information based on the model and based on the image that you feed it. So again, this is the model. Going back to the command prompt. So if I just push 2, it will go into this part of the code. So it's going to do like the analysis async. And just to show you that I'm not fooling you, let's go to the implementation. And here you can see that it's actually calling that service with this image. And you can see that that's exactly the same image as I was showing in the browser earlier. So let's first look at the result and then take another look at the code again. So we'll just press 2. It's running and it's done. And yeah, it has now done the analysis and gives you that same tags and confidence level. Let's see if we can get that side by side with the one that you were running here. Run it again. This kitchen, this is the image. So I downloaded the image and uploaded it. And you see that we get exactly the same results with the same confidence levels. So yeah, that's how you could do things with like the Vision Studio and the Vision SDK that is available as part of the Azure AI offering that we have. Now, to give a little bit time to keep a little bit time left for question and answer, I'm just going to go through this sample pretty quickly. But basically what we have here is the image analyzer, which is part of this SDK that we installed. We're going to prepare some options for that. We give it a source, we give it these service options. So in this case, it also needs the endpoint and a key. But in this case, I used environment variables to set them up and kind of make them available to the command prompt. In contrast to the app settings.json file that we used in the other example. So then we just feed all these options, all these parameters into the image analyzer. It waits for the task completion signal, and if it's done, it's just gonna go parse all those details and write them out here. So it gives you all the tags and the confidence levels. So again, pretty powerful with just yeah, like what is it, 25, 26 lines of code. Gives you all this image capabilities. Now, this is just an example of getting tags of an image. But if we go back into what we have here to the Vision Studio, these are all kinds of different functionalities that you could do. So this was the one where we said extract common tags, but yeah, you could also say I want to remove the background from an image, and we can just try that. So let's take that same picture, Windows Kitchen, and this is then what you get. So if you want to do some image processing within your own application, and this is kind of the functionality that you need, Azure is here to help you and make it easier. I think I have a couple of options here to zoom in and zoom out. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. And also the studio has entries into the references documentation and how you can use the actual REST APIs to call these functionalities. And all these examples in the Visual Studio have images already available, so that makes it easier to use them. Oh, this is a bad example, but maybe this one. Well, this one also needs, of course, an example. You could also use your own again, but here, if I just select one, it can distinguish all the different products. And if I move over this list, it actually selects that specific product from the image. So pretty powerful, say, for example, to do automated inventories and that kind of functionality, where you could also use these services for. So 10 minutes left. This is what I had prepared for today. I hope it gave you a little bit of an insight of how you can use Blazor and how you can use these services and how you can combine them to make pretty powerful applications without inventing the whole of the wheel yourself again. Any questions? All right, then yeah, we'll leave it at this. We'll give you some time back today. And thanks for your attention. This was the last part of the series. If there are other subjects regarding to integrating with Blazor that you would like to learn more about, reach out to us, let us know, and then we can see if we can do some kind of tailored session for you on that subject. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you all for joining.